In July of 2019, a crowd of Hong Kong protesters were set upon by a group of masked men in white t-shirts wielding metal rods. 45 people were injured in this insidious attack. More than that, the assault serves as a grim reminder that the criminal triads who have been operating in Hong Kong's shadows for decades are as alive as ever. But who exactly are these triads? Simply a loose organization of thugs for hire in the pocket of the Chinese government? Or a vast shadowy network of villains whose roots extend back centuries? In this video we will explore the ancient clandestine history of China's criminal underworld, explaining how a society of mystic Freemasons evolved into a nationwide liberation front and eventually into one of the most sinister criminal nexuses of all time. Shout out to Ridge for sponsoring this video. We've been using Ridge wallets for almost a year now. They don't fold, don't bulge in your pocket, and are light with a modern, sleek and industrial design. As with many people, we were using outdated wallets designed in the 90s. We moved away from large flip phones to smartphones, but why did our wallets never get the upgrade we deserve? Ridge holds up to 12 cards and has an attached money clip for cash. It comes in 30 different colors and styles, including our favorites, carbon fiber and burnt titanium. For us, switching from the old wallets to Ridge was like going from an old chair to super fancy gaming armchairs. But don't take our word for it, Ridge has 30,000 5-star reviews. Each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty, and the Ridge team is so confident that you'll like it that they'll let you try it for 45 days. The wallets are an excellent gift choice for upcoming Father's Day. If you don't love it, just send it back and get a full refund. Support our channel and get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping and returns by going to ridge.com/kingsandgenerals and using the code kingsandgenerals. For as long as there has been China, there have been secret societies operating in its shadows. The dynastic emperors of the Middle Kingdom were bound to uphold a rigid set of moral codes to maintain the mandate of heaven, in other words, their divine right to rule. Whenever the emperors were perceived to have lost the mandate of heaven, it fell upon these secret societies to emerge from the darkness and lead an uprising to overthrow their imperial overlords. Perhaps the most infamous secret society of Chinese antiquity were the Yellow Turbans, an underground movement started by the Taoist faith healer Zhang Jie, which eventually erupted into one of the Celestial Kingdom's bloodiest peasant rebellions and indirectly led to the collapse of the Imperial Han dynasty. Another notable example comes 1,000 years later, when China was under Mongol rule. Under the noses of the great Khans grew the White Lotus Society, a spiritualist Buddhist and Manichaean hybrid order whose incense-burning rituals were the breeding grounds of the Red Turban Rebellion, which ultimately saw the Mongols driven out of China and a restoration of native Han Chinese rule through the rise of the Ming dynasty in 1368. Cryptic fellowships like these would persist through every preceding era of Chinese history, but it's during the reign of China's last imperial dynasty where our story truly begins. In 1644, the Manchu people had conquered Beijing, the capital of the Ming dynasty. In the following decades, they would conquer the rest of China in a series of wars that caused a staggering amount of death and destruction. While much of the Middle Kingdom would eventually come to prosper under the new Manchurian-ruled Qing dynasty, many native Han Chinese remained discontented with their new emperors, who they saw as foreign usurpers. From the late 17th century onwards, many secret societies would gestate in the shadows, providing a means for people to secretly circumvent their imperial rule. The largest hotspot for clandestine activity during the early Qing dynasty was located in the province of Fujian. This southern coastal region had always been something like the Wild West of China. It had been one of the last regions to submit to Manchu authority, and even afterwards had remained a largely lawless land, dominated by independent pirates and powerful family clans perpetually in conflict with one another. For the typical Fujianese peasant in the 17th century, life was hardly harmonious. Their existence was punctuated first by the turmoil of invasion and then by the constant local feuds. It was not uncommon for Fujianese villagers to be caught in the crossfire of this social chaos, ending up beaten, starved or forced from their homes. In response, many peasants took the law into their own hands, forming private mutual aid societies known as sworn brotherhoods. These usually consisted of small alliances of local families, bound together by an oath of blood and a holy patron, a Guan Yin. It was a way for people to unite and protect each other in a lawless society dominated by avaricious freebooters and corrupt government officials. The Qing government quickly identified these brotherhoods as a threat to their authority, and as early as 1646 had them made illegal. All this accomplished, however, was to drive them underground and give them a newfound resolve to overthrow the local officials who kept them in the shadows. Between 1696 and 1721, no less than 4 regional rebellions, orchestrated by these scheming brotherhoods, had erupted across Fujian and Taiwan. Although each one was ultimately put down, the Qing were unable to prevent the formation of new secret societies, which continued to sprout like weeds across Fujian throughout the next 3 decades. In time, one of these brotherhoods would come to supersede all others in scope and power. They were the Tiandihui, the predecessors of the modern criminal triads we know today. The Tiandihui went by many names. Their official title translates literally into Heaven and Earth Society, but they were also known as the Hongmen, which means floodgate. Their emergence as a secret society is told through a mythic origin story passed down through its members, known as the Xilu legend. This story begins in the reign of the Kangxi Emperor, during which a horde of barbarians known as the Xilu were threatening to invade China from the west. In the face of this attack, 128 Shaolin monks volunteered into the service of the Qing Emperor. They fought off the barbarians with ease using their mystic kung fu, and declined any reward from the emperor, simply returning to their monastery to continue their ascetic Buddhist life. However, they were betrayed. Due to a rumor spread by an evil official that the monks themselves were planning a rebellion, the Kangxi Emperor had their monastery stormed and all the Shaolin practitioners slaughtered. Of the original 128, only 5 monks survived. These 5 fled to the sea, where they found a white incense burner on the beach, inscribed with the words, "Restore the Ming, cut off the Qing." Seeing this as a sign from heaven, the surviving monks pledged their vengeance against the Qing emperors who had betrayed them, vowing to restore China to its rightful Ming emperors. They became the founding fathers of the Society of Heaven and Earth, whose ultimate goal was to work in the shadows and create a mass peasant uprising to overthrow the Manchus. In truth, the Xilu origin story is most likely fictitious, and the origins of the Heaven and Earth Society are more humble. Tracking the real history of a secret society whose express purpose was to remain hidden makes for tenuous historiography at best, but through extant Qing records and personal testimonies from the time, we've managed to piece together the Tiandihui's true origins. They reveal that their original goal wasn't to overthrow the Qing at all, instead being one of the many mutual aid brotherhoods that cropped up in Fujian in the 18th century. The society's roots can be traced back to the 1750s, when a man known as Zheng Kai migrated from his native Jiangpu County in Fujian into the province of Sichuan, seeking his fortunes. There he joined the company of the spiritual guru Ma Jiulong, a monk who specialized in magic rites and the purging of malicious spirits. Zheng Kai soon became an itinerant monk himself and traveled to Guangdong, where he used his newfound spiritual powers to recruit a flock of 50 or so acolytes. He returned with them to Fujian around 1761, where his following continued to grow. Now known by various aliases like Monk One, he reorganized his followers into a secret society, and it was here that the Heaven and Earth Society was born in earnest. The Tiandihui spread rapidly across southern Fujian, and like many secret societies before them, turned their thoughts towards rebellion, not against the Qing dynasty as a whole, but rather the local regional authorities which kept them relegated to the shadows. In winter of 1767, the leading brothers of the Tiandihui gathered to formulate a plan to strike at the storehouses, treasuries and homes of the community pillars of Jiangpu County, hoping to use the food and money stolen to fund a rebellion against the local government. However, their first assault on the prefectural capital of Jiangpu was easily crushed by the city garrison, with many of the society's acolytes captured and leaders executed. Despite this initial setback, the Qiandihui continued to grow in the following decades, undetectable by Qing agents. It soon spread along river systems and transportation networks, establishing itself in market towns and county seats. It slowly transformed from a motley mob of opportunistic brigands into a highly sophisticated social network that operated right under the noses of imperial agents. People flocked to join the Heaven and Earth Society for various reasons. Spiritual guidance and access to their resource networks were prominent motivating factors, but above all, it was the protection the society provided that made them attractive to many. The Qiandihui developed deep connections with the local bandit networks, compelling many traveling minstrels and merchants to join up with them to gain immunity from roadside crime. The traditions that would come to define the Hongmen developed early on in their history, most prominent among them being their initiation ceremony for new members. In this sacred rite, a prospective acolyte would crawl under a pair of crossed swords, symbolically submitting to having them fall upon his neck should he ever betray the order. He then swore an oath of brotherhood to the society before burning incense and ingesting a sacred mixture of wine and sacrificial animals' blood, sealing his blood pact. As they operated in the shadows, the Hongmen were forced to use a series of cryptic symbols and rituals in order to identify one another without being detected by the outside world. The homes of order members could be distinguished with a shrine to Guan Yu, a historic Chinese figure from the Three Kingdoms era, who embodied righteousness and loyalty, the core values of the society. Ritualized incense burning became another one of the order's key identifiers. The Qiandihui adopted the ancient practice of fengsheng, which translates to sacred incense sharing. It amounted to a set of holy rituals that helped different sects of the society identify and communicate with one another. Furthermore, a system of cryptic hand signals and code words were developed. Hongmen were told to always use 3 fingers when giving or receiving tea or tobacco, specifically using their thumb, index and middle fingers to lift from the bottom of the cup or pipe. The same 3 fingers were to be raised when they were approached by bandits, along with the phrase, "Heaven moves as fast as a 3,000 li cart." In 1821, a Scottish missionary in China, William Milne, noticed how the Freemason societies he observed had an obsession with the symbolic value of the number 3. Through him, the word triad came to be a generic term the English-speaking world used to identify any Chinese secret society, a word we still use today. Despite preferring to remain in the shadows, the early Qiandihui was capable of acting as a powerful political force when its hand was forced. The greatest example of this occurred in Taiwan in 1786, when a dispute between 2 brothers over their wealthy father's inheritance erupted into open conflict. In response, the local Qing government stepped in and arrested the 2 brothers, then proceeded to hunt down all the men who'd been part of their gangs. Many of these men fled to Lin Shuangwen, the leader of the Taiwanese chapter of the Heaven and Earth Society, hoping that he would help them avoid arrest. When the Qing officials heard of what was going on, they had their troops fan out across Taiwan, hunting down the enigmatic Hongmen leader. They left a heavy-handed presence wherever they went, burning down the homes of anyone who refused to surrender information about the illegal brotherhood. This provoked Lin to call upon the entire Heaven and Earth Society and its allies to rise up in open rebellion. The result was one of the largest wars fought on Taiwanese soil. As some 300,000 Taiwanese Hoklos rose up to support his cause, they quickly conquered much of Taiwan, save for the provincial capital of Tainan. While the rebellion was eventually crushed, it took the combined forces of 7 Chinese provinces and 1/3 of the entire Qing treasury to do so. Lin Shuangwen was captured and executed in Beijing, but the Qiandihui slipped back into hiding, regrowing its damaged roots in the shadows. Although ultimately a failure, The scale and cost of the rebellion puts into perspective how rapidly the Tiandihui had advanced as an organization in just the 25 years since its foundation. Through the 19th century, the Heaven and Earth Society experienced an exponential spread out of its traditional homeland, as peddlers, wandering performers, and traveling monks disseminated it across China. By the 1830s, they had established firm footholds in the provinces of Guangxi, Hunan, Yunnan, and Guizhou, and had rapidly become the largest secret society in China. From the 1850s onwards, a series of gold rushes in California, Australia, and Western Canada prompted many Chinese to migrate over and seek their fortunes in the English-speaking world. The Tiandihui went with them, providing a network of social, religious, and economic support to Chinese laborers who often worked as impoverished miners or ill-treated railroad workers. It should be noted that at this point, the Tiandihui was no longer a single society with a central leader, but rather many independent chapters with the same rituals and ideals operating across China and beyond. As more and more new chapters of Hongmen sprouted up across China, they found themselves struggling to find common purpose between them, straining the ideological unity of the Tiandihui. Furthermore, as the order grew, so did the Imperial Qing increase their efforts to snuff them out of existence. Following these internal and external pressures, a new common mantra spread across every chapter of Heaven and Earth in China: depose the Qing, restore the Ming. Rebellion against the Manchu-led Qing government was nothing new, but up to this point had largely been sporadic, reactionary, and regionally contained. Now, slowly but surely, the Tiandihui evolved into a nationwide patriotic front, with the goal of leading a mass revolution to depose their foreign Manchu rulers and restore the native Han Chinese Ming dynasty to the celestial throne. It was also around this time that the Xilu origin story developed, invented as a means to unite the Tiandihui under their new revolutionary goal. Sure enough, whenever movements sprouted up against the Qing, the Tiandihui would be there, working their shadowy fingers. Between 1850 and 1864, a self-declared prophet named Hongshu Chuan claimed to be the brother of Jesus Christ and started an infamously bloody war of rebellion against the Qing emperors, which saw the deaths of up to 30 million Chinese people. The Tiandihui played a major role in supporting Xu Chuan's Taiping Heavenly Kingdom by inciting a revolt known as the Red Turban Rebellion in the province of Guangdong. This was ultimately put down by the Qing, but not before contributing some 2 million lives to the total death toll. It seemed like since its foundation, the Tiandihui had been crushed every time it had openly taken up arms against the Qing authorities. This would change with one man, none other than Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the father of modern China. As a young revolutionary, Dr. Sun relied heavily on the international networks of the Hongmen to travel between foreign countries freely, from where he gathered international support for his plan to overthrow the Qing dynasty. Their help paid off, for in 1911, the Xinhai Revolution saw the Qing dynasty finally deposed and replaced by the Republic of China, led by the Kuomintang party. With the Republicans victorious, the main purpose of the Tiandihui had finally been fulfilled. They hadn't restored the Ming dynasty perhaps, but the Manchus had been overthrown, and native Han rule had returned to China. It is at this point that the freedom-fighting Freemasons begin transforming into the unscrupulous criminals we know today. Following the collapse of the Qing, the Tiandihui no longer had a purpose for existing, and its values of patriotism and honor began to slowly erode away. Criminal activity was nothing new to many sects of Hongmen, many of whom had been involved in the British opium trade since the 19th century. But the breakdown in purpose following the rise of the Republic of China was what caused many Hongmen factions to turn full-time to crime, their centuries-old secret resource networks making them perfectly suited to operate in protection rackets, human trafficking rings, and the drug trade. These newly formed criminal triad factions proved highly unscrupulous, often operating in the pocket of the Kuomintang, who used them as hired thugs to keep their citizens in line. The most prominent of these occurred in 1927, when an infamous branch of the Triads known as the Green Gang helped massacre thousands of communists in Shanghai. Throughout World War II, various triads collaborated with both Japanese occupiers and the colonial British Authority in Hong Kong, a far cry from their patriotic Chinese roots. With the end of World War II came a resurgence in China's communist uprising, which by 1949 had secured control over the entire Chinese mainland. The newly emergent People's Republic of China, headed by the iron-fisted Mao Zedong, had no tolerance for secret societies or the ancient clandestine traditions they clung to, initiating a massive purge that forced most of the Triads to retreat to British-controlled Hong Kong. However, this was a blessing in disguise for them, for in this entrepot of global trade, the criminals thrived. In the latter half of the 20th century, Hong Kong became dominated by multiple emergent triad groups, with the largest conglomerates being the Wo Group, the Sun Yee-on, and the 14K. In 1960, the police commissioner of Hong Kong remarked that among the city's 3 million inhabitants, an estimated 600,000 had ties to the Triads. Between the 1950s and 1990s, the Kowloon Walled City, a former Qing military fort, became the single most densely populated place on Earth. A crowded ghetto where neither sunlight nor colonial law could touch. It was effectively an autonomous triad-controlled city-state within the borders of Hong Kong. Even as the Triads abandoned their original purpose and transitioned into the modern world, they never gave up the rituals and traditions of their ancient roots. To this day, a Triad member's initiation ritual involves the same crossed swords, incense and blood oath of their ancestors of the Heaven and Earth Society. The rites of the ancient Freemasons remain, but the honour and patriotism that their brotherhood was predicated on has long since given way to debauchery and greed. When Triad members emerged from the woodwork to silence pro-democracy protesters in 2019, it served as a grim reminder that shadowy societies willing to commit violence for the highest bidder remain prominent. Our series on the origins of various criminal syndicates will continue, so make sure you are subscribed to our channel and have pressed the bell button. We would like to express our gratitude to our Patreon supporters and channel members who make the creation of our videos possible. Now you can also support us by buying our merchandise via the link in the description. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.